The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Questions swirl around the killing of an All in the Family sitcom star and his wife as their son sits behind bars. And in Ohio, jurors are confronted with the clothes from a watery grave preserved for nearly 25 years in a cold case murder trial. Plus, a Georgia man on trial for promising customers a new smile. Why this proclaimed veneers doctor is facing RICO charges. The court of law has adjourned for the day. Let's call to order Court of Opinion. Welcome to Court of Opinion. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for joining us. This hour is one that serves as a space to air out viewpoints. May they be controversial, we will see together in this conversation. And it's on all of those cases that we're tracking across the country. We've got a brilliant panel of experts on deck for you, lending us their strongest opinions and takes. So let's get right to our first case. We begin in California with the tragic killing of Hollywood legend Rob Reiner and his wife, Michele. And before we get you to our live report from in front of the Reiner home, here's Court TV anchor Michael Ayala with what we know so far.
Sunday, December 14th, around 3:30 p.m., Los Angeles firefighters responded to a 911 call at the Brentwood home of Hollywood filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife, Michele.
Upon arrival, they determined that there were two deceased individuals inside of the residence.
Rob Reiner, the son of comedy legend Carl Reiner, catapulted to fame in the 1970s as Michael Stivic, Archie Bunker's hippie son-in-law on the hit television series All in the Family.
All right, put it in.
He went on to become a prolific director of such films as This Is Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, and When Harry Met Sally.
I came here tonight because when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible.
Reiner and his wife, Hollywood producer Michele Singer Reiner, were found in their home fatally stabbed. The Reiner family confirmed the deaths in a statement posted on Variety.com. It is with profound sorrow that we announce the tragic passing of Michele and Rob Reiner. We are heartbroken by this sudden loss, and we ask for privacy during this unbelievably difficult time. The Reiners married in 1989 and had 3 children together, sons Jake, Nick, and daughter Romy. Nick Reiner has spoken openly through the years about his issues with drug addiction and homelessness. In 2016, he appeared in this clip, currently circulating on social media, with his father. It was a panel discussion promoting the movie Being Charlie, which was partially inspired by Rob Reiner's experiences parenting Nick.
The whole process for me, I can just speak for myself, it did make me understand him a lot more, and I think it made me a better father. Hopefully it did. If your kid is going through rough times, you know, the parent is, your main job is to keep your child safe.
As police, media, and onlookers converged on the home, sightings were reported of Reiner's friends and collaborators, Larry David and Billy Crystal. Tributes poured in from Hollywood and beyond. Carrie Elwes, who starred in Reiner's cult classic The Princess Bride, posted no words. Jerry O'Connell was one of the child actors featured in Stand By Me, and he tweeted, "Love you, Rob, sincerely." Former President Barack Obama wrote in part, "Beneath all of the stories he produced was a deep belief in the goodness of people and a lifelong commitment to putting that belief in action."
Our Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas has traveled to Los Angeles. He is outside of the Reiner home there in Brentwood and joins us now live. Cody, tell us, what is the latest in this investigation? What are you seeing out there tonight?
Well, good evening, Julia. It is a massive, massive media presence out here in front of this Brentwood home here in Los Angeles. Plenty of media, lots of security patrol shutting down this whole block. No caution tape or anything like that, but there's security out front of the gate. As you can see, this man standing here in front of the Brentwood home here where the Reiners lived. But of course, we now know that the 32-year-old son, Nick Reiner, is charged with the double murders of his mother and father. That would be Rob Reiner and his wife, Michele. Now, Rob Reiner, a pillar of Hollywood, of course, course, directing When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, The Princess Bride, all of those movies that many people across the globe have come to love growing up with. Now, of course, we also know that police were called out here about the death of two people found inside this home on Sunday afternoon, who now we know are identified as Rob and Michele, and they were also, according to CNN, found by their daughter, Romy, which is just a tragedy all around. Stab wounds. Apparently, Nick slit their throats. That's how they were found by their daughter, Romy. Now, their son, of course, Nick, has been vocal about his struggles with addiction, his struggles with homelessness beginning in his early teens, even going on to co-write that movie, Being Charlie, with his father, Rob, in 2016, that was loosely based on the struggles of his early life. And of course, LAPD has come out and said that that's one of the things that led to the questioning of him and now his eventual arrest. He was booked around 5 o'clock this morning. He's sitting behind bars without bond. We had initially heard reports that he was held on $4 million bond, but LAPD came out in a press release, said there is no bond right now. He is sitting behind bars. He will not be getting out anytime soon. And we also learned today, as we're standing out here, that behind these gates, inside this house, is legal counsel. No one else, the rest of the family, all the other children are mourning close by at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. And we have another report, again coming from CNN, attributing to them that Nick Reiner was seen having an argument with his father, Rob Reiner, at Conan O'Brien's Los Angeles home Saturday night, the night before the alleged murders. He was seen there along with his mother as well. So there was some sort of scuffle, some sort of something that had Nick upset that now subsequently led to the stabbings that happened yesterday. And also, as we've learned in the past hour here, LAPD plans to submit charges to the DA's office as early as tomorrow. So Julia will have to continue to see how this investigation continues to unfold. But of course, lots of mourning going on, not only here in Brentwood, Los Angeles, not only here in the United States, but all across the globe, from all the fans and all the people in Hollywood, including former President Barack Obama, who sent this post out on X saying, "Michele and I are heartbroken by the tragic passing of Rob Reiner and his beloved wife, Michele. Rob's achievements in film and television gave us some of our most cherished stories on screen, but beneath all of the stories he produced was a deep belief in the goodness of people and a lifelong commitment to putting that belief in action. Together, he and his wife lived lives defined by purpose. They will be remembered for the values they championed and the countless people they inspired. We send our deepest condolences to all who loved them." And that sentiment is being echoed across the world here, of course, today, Julia.
Cody Thomas, thank you so much for keeping us updated on this one. I want to bring in our guest panel to talk about this case that has everyone talking today, this tragedy out in California. In studio with me tonight, we have trial attorney and former criminal defense attorney Erica Wilson with us, and University of Georgia Law School professor and former prosecutor and defense attorney Melissa Redmond. And joining us remotely, criminal defense attorney Ellis Palavidas. It's so good to have you all here, especially talking about this one that I know you saw the headlines all throughout the day today. Erica, I want to start with you. Kick us off with the conversation. What's your opinion on how things are going to go for this investigation, and we expect those formal criminal charges against Nick Reiner?
So this is going to be interesting to watch, particularly given his troubled background. So what I anticipate at some point, he's definitely going to lawyer up, but I definitely see a defense coming into play as it relates to some sort of mental health defect or based on his substance abuse.
Yep. Melissa, what do you think? What's your opinion on just the pressure that's going to be on this prosecutor's office right now?
It looks like this case is moving very fast. The fact that the case is going to be submitted to the DA's office as soon as tomorrow indicates they have a lot of evidence to where they're not still building that initial probable cause level of investigation, that they've already established that to send it to the DA's office for indictment. Tells me that there's possibly home surveillance video, interviews with the family members, perhaps something in an interview that he may have given. We haven't heard anything about a confession at this point. But though that swiftness leads me to believe that they have a lot of evidence, and I think for the defense will definitely be focused on mitigation.
Yeah, Ellis, what's your opinion on this one?
I think that in cases like this, assuming there's this mental health backdrop as well as the drug use, you don't usually see the best of crimes being executed. In other words, they're typically going to be a lot of clues left behind, and so they need to gather those with that powerful motive that they have with the backdrop. I think that that's where it's headed, but you never know until you know.
This one was just so shocking. When you first saw the news, there were some people who were asking, because you have a 78-year-old actor, director in his home and his wife, both of them found deceased. People were wondering about the Gene Hackman death, with him being in his home and his wife, and then to find out that no, this was something of a homicide, and then for a loved one to be in custody. I mean, it just shocked the conscience. What was your reaction to even these headlines in this case?
I was definitely surprised in this, but then once you hear a little bit more about his background, it starts to make a little bit more sense, and as more details come out, this definitely, and I agree with Nick 100% in that this is probably going to be one of those ones. It was a crime of passion. If they had a fight the night before, and then 24 hours later they end up dead. So certainly I do, and I also agree with Melissa as well. The evidence must have been insurmountable, because they did move really, really quickly on this.
Yeah, you mentioned home surveillance.
Right, I would imagine a home in Brentwood, you would have home surveillance. I did initially think of a Gene Hackman, that it was something inside the home. And when someone was arrested and it later came out to be his son, you kind of think it definitely was someone who had access to them. You generally wouldn't expect a crime of opportunity in a neighborhood like that. You would expect it would be someone either inside the home or very closely related to the home. And so for it to come out to be his son, I can't imagine the position that would put the sister who discovered the bodies in, the fact that she found her parents and then the suspect being her brother. That's kind of where my thoughts went immediately upon hearing that news.
They have 3 children in total, and you're right about this community. The reports that we're getting from on the ground there is they don't have a lot of crime that happens there. Very affluent community, about a mile away from where O.J. Simpson and Nicole Kidman's home was, where she was killed along with Ron Goldman. I mean, this is an area in Hollywood that has a lot of notoriety. Ellis, what are you thinking about in terms of just the loss here and the attention that this is going to get as it moves through the criminal justice system?
I have tried several murder cases, and what I can say is even on the simplest ones in terms of the evidence, the feel in that courtroom is just very different. There's no case like a murder case, because you have the victims of the family and, of course, the defendant's life on the line. And in this instance, it's the same family on both sides. And I think that's just got to be an absolutely crushing thing to deal with. I don't know how you get through that.
Yeah, Alice, a follow-up, parenticide. This is something that is not uncommon. We have seen these kind of cases, but it adds to how the prosecution may approach this.
Well, I think patricide, matricide, those are some of the most heinous of crimes that we ever see. They've come with historically the most severe sort of punishments. And I think that, you know, there's 2 elements that are very violent here. One is obviously the people. It's the father and the mother. What does it take to do something like that? And then you also have the fact that, you know, slit throats and multiple stab wounds, that's an inherently violent act in and of itself. And so I really think that it's a situation where even if there is mitigation, the type of mitigation it will be, which is this person has a mental health issue, you can't let that person out on the street if this is how they acted in this instance. So either way, I think that we're going to be spending significant time behind bars if, of course, they have the evidence.
Yeah, initially we did think that there were reports that it was a $4 million bond. Now we understand that there is no bond for this individual. What happens next in terms of him? I mean, what access to resources will he have? Will he be limited based on what happened with his parents if they were his? We don't know what his financial situation is, but how will that work?
So what we do know is that he's had a troubled past. He's had bouts of homelessness, and there at some points the financial purse strings were cut. And so it's going to be interesting to see if the sister, because again, like Nick said, they're going to be conflicted, because how do you help your brother? He's accused of killing your parents, or do you kind of let him fend for himself? So I don't know how this is going to play out. I don't see him getting a public defender in this particular case, but we'll see.
You answered my question. That is one that I was wondering. What will happen? Mental health evaluations, no doubt?
It would depend on the resources he has. And like Erica said, if he's cut off financially from the assets of the parents, if the sisters or his brothers are, if neither are willing to step up and provide that financial support for him, it is going to limit how much he can get into that mitigation that he needs for a good defense.
I want to read some of the comments that have been made by public figures who have reacted to this. It's been such a tragedy because this is someone who was beloved by Hollywood. Stephen King, one of the people whose novels were made into film, said he's horrified and saddened by the death of Rob Reiner and Michele, wonderful friend, political ally, and brilliant filmmaker, including two of mine. That includes Stand By Me and Misery. Rest in peace, Rob. You always stood by me. And also journalist Marie Shriver also responding and reacting. And she actually says, we had dinner this past week, and they were in the best place in their lives, loving one another, their friends, their family, and their country. They never gave up on our country, always wanted to make our world better, and were willing to fight to make it the country they loved. Ellis, are people like Marie Shriver going to be interviewed by police, knowing that there were people who may have been in contact with the family, saw them? We heard Cody saying that there was this alleged argument with between the suspect and his parents at Conan O'Brien's house.
I do think she has put herself out there now, because understanding the dynamic is going to help build the motive to try and explain why such a heinous act would occur. So I think a thorough investigation is going to be required, and people who did know about those dynamics in the lead up to this event will be interviewed.
Final thoughts, how much are prosecutors going to listen to family? Because when we have a case where family is, this is domestic in nature, and there are times where you will have family members who will say the parents would not have wanted this if they understood the struggles of their son. With this being such a high-profile case, how do you think prosecutors are going to balance that?
You have to lean on the family, because how else are you going to be able to establish motive? Right now, I mean, it's unclear. We're all just saying, okay, he has this troubled past, he has drug history, he has maybe some mental health issues, but something had to happen. You allegedly slit their throats. That's a very personal type of murder. And so they're going to need to establish why it went from, you know, them being able to be seen together and everything appearing to be okay to this.
Yeah, all right, we have to leave it there. Thank you all for your opinions. We are going to get to our break. When we come back, we're going to head to a trial in Ohio, where it's day 4 of the drowned wife murder trial for Paul Hicks. The jury today saw multiple items that were fished out of a watery crime scene. We'll show you our pick for today's best evidence.
The Court TV podcast will return.
Welcome back to Court of Opinion. We are following a once cold case out of Ohio where a husband was the prime person of interest, but there were no charges in his wife's drowning death for 24 years. And the reason the investigation changed from cold to hot for Paul Hicks is his close friend came forward to say he wants to tell the truth about what he really witnessed back in 2001. And he's expected to testify that Paul pushed his wife's unconscious body inside of a car into a pond. The defense reserved their right to an opening in this case, and Hicks has pleaded not guilty. So what does it look like in court when you're showing evidence that's over 2 decades old? Here's what our Court of Opinion team chose as the best physical evidence presented for day 4 of trial. The jury saw the clothes that the victim, Regina Hicks, was wearing when she died. A detective with the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations showed the jury this muddy clothing, including a sweatshirt and a pair of jeans. These were the items that she was wearing when her body was found inside of her car back in October of 2001. Let's watch that moment in court.
What are we looking at, Joe?
A pair of blue jeans, black metal studded belt, button fly up the front, covered in mud. These were the pants that Regina was wearing when her body was recovered.
Before you put it back in, what do you observe around the waistline, the rear waistline? Outside, rear waistline.
Mud.
Is there a belt?
Yeah, the belt's in there. There's mud caked in between the belt and the belt loops.
Our panel still here with us, Erica Wilson, Melissa Redman, and Ellis Palavidas. Melissa, let me start with you on this one. Evidence like this, how does it impact a jury? Because it's trying to take them 24 years ago to that pond.
It makes it real. We're talking about a real person because sometimes it's hard to connect what's happening in the courtroom, especially something that happened 24 years ago, to an actual person. So anything the prosecution to do to humanize the victim, like this was what she was wearing, pictures of the car she was in, pictures of her in life, because they're also going to see pictures of assume they will see autopsy pictures, but just connecting those dots so that it paints a picture for the jury of what she was wearing, where she was, what she experienced, what the pond looked like, what that must have been like for her to suffer that drowning, and to draw those connections for the jury.
Ellis, weigh in on seeing that kind of evidence and that versus photos, because sometimes we see photos of evidence like that, especially when it's so old, but they were able to bring that out in reality for these jurors.
So the first thing is, and since, on the opinion front is, when you have a body, right, that sometimes is the strongest evidence, right? It's hard. It's the hardest thing to fight is the weight of the body, is what a homicide prosecutor told me once. And so I think that jurors definitely do take that seriously. But I also think that there is an element of this, that the description of what happened in the lead up to the putting her to driving the car into the pond was that there was a lot of mud on the door. And so I think they're trying to use that to corroborate what the witness is saying with respect to what happened before she was put into the water.
Oh, good point. And there was mud on the defendant, according to his sister, who witnessed him right after this happened. Erica, your thoughts and opinion on that kind of evidence. Does it actually move the needle, or is it more emotional?
Listen, here's the thing. Jurors love demonstrative evidence, right? It's way better than a picture. They can see it. It makes it more real. Sometimes jurors want to have it back in the jury room. They want to look at it. They want to evaluate it. It helps it make sense. And when you have demonstrative evidence for a case that is this old, it is definitely going to be helpful.
Yeah, is anyone surprised that it's still got the mud on it? It has been preserved in this way for so long.
I was definitely surprised. Where has it been? If it's like when I'm familiar. When did the car come out of the pond?
2001.
Okay, so this has been sitting in the evidence bag. That makes sense, that they've had it since that long in evidence, just waiting for the dots to connect so they can arrest the suspect. So that makes sense. But yeah, jurors want to be able to see, and sometimes they want to touch it. Sometimes they want, they want a box of gloves back there in the jury room to hold it. I don't know why, but they do. So anything that makes it real is helpful. It helps move the needle.
Let's go to another piece of evidence that was shown in court today. This is our honorable mention for best evidence. This is a bag of items found inside of the victim's car. So this is a photo of the vehicle, that 1992 Camaro that she was in, that was fished out of this pond. But inside it, they were able to, again, as we're talking about, preserve these items that were inside of a FYE, that store, FYE. She had a bag of items inside. Let's watch.
Small purse in here. Nothing in it. Some mud still visible on it. Torn bag from a jewelry store. A PlayStation game. A stuffed animal. Package for cigarettes. An Identikid sticker.
Ellis, let me get your opinion on this one. Do you ever argue against evidence coming out like this inside of a courtroom that may or may not be helpful to the jury in actually deciding if Paul Hicks was the assailant?
I do my best to argue whatever I can in the interest of my client. That said, will I win is a different debate. Now, in this instance, you have a cold case. This is 2001. In 2015, the witness, Stephen Gates, tried to reach out, and law enforcement dropped the ball. The government is always on trial in a case, and they need to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I think showing the steps that they took and the seriousness with which they took this case along the way is important in order to block the attack that's going to come from the defense, which is, why are we now going to trust this witness who hasn't come forward in 24 years?
Yeah, Ellis brings up a good point. Stephen Gates, he is the friend who has come forward. He's getting immunity to testify against his friend. I imagine they were all in their early 20s in 2001, and he's now coming forward as a witness. Does this evidence help set the scene for him?
It has to, because again, we're battling the clock here. This is a case that's been going on for a very long time. And then we also have to kind of evaluate the friend's motives. Like, did they have a falling out? What happened? Why is he now, you know, making it known or pushing forward with letting the police know? But again, he was alleging that he was there that night. So anything that he can corroborate with the evidence that they actually have will only help bolster their case. So whatever they have, if he can attest to it, yeah, I saw the bag, yeah, I saw this, and yes, she had on these clothes, and yes, the mud was on the door. All of these things can kind of work together to tell the story that they need to tell.
Yeah. Everything they would admit into evidence, you will hope there be some corroboration. But there's also maybe another reason why they're admitting that particular evidence, and I would not be surprised if we see that stuffed animal and that PlayStation again in closing arguments being used by the prosecution.
Oh, wow. All right, everyone stand by. We've got to get to our break. When we come back, we're going to shift gears and go beyond the gavel, breaking down the biggest true crime cases. Tonight, there is a desperate manhunt going on right now for a mass shooting suspect who opened fire inside of Brown University. There were terrified students who were forced to hunker down inside of the classroom as those shots rang out. We're breaking it all down after this.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. Let's go beyond the gavel. Those cases that haven't yet made it into a court of law with a trial, but investigations that are capturing the attention across the nation. That is what lies beyond the gavel. And we're taking you now to Rhode Island. That's the case that we're focused on. This is the case where there was a shooting on the Brown University campus. And these new images have been released of someone that the officials are saying is a suspect / person of interest in this shooting from over the weekend. On Saturday, this mass shooting left 2 students dead and 9 others injured. And the FBI is describing the person of interest as someone who has a stocky build and around a height of 5'8". Now, earlier, there was a person of interest who was detained in connection with the attack, but they were later released. That happened yesterday. So let's take a look together at some of the newly released videos. This first one is from a Ring doorbell camera. You can see the suspect there walking past this camera, and also another video that shows the suspect crossing a street. His back is to that surveillance video camera, so you really can't make out a lot of his face. And we also understand from the photographs in the front that he is wearing a black mask across his face. Also, he's got the hat on, and it almost looks like he may even be wearing gloves. Of course, it's very chilly there in Rhode Island this time of year. So again, you can't make out his face very well, but officials are hoping that just these images is going to spark someone's memory, that they are going to see his gait, see how he moves, see his build, and perhaps contact them. The police chief at the press conference urged the public to help with identifying the suspect.
We want to make sure, as the governor stated and the mayor stated, to make sure that we identify this individual and bring him to justice. Our work that initiated today and continues to initiate for a while since it started. We're at the 49th hour, and there's no one that wants to put this individual in handcuffs than us. So this has brought us to a new lead, which I momentarily will be able to provide you with. It's going to include video of this individual as well as photos of this individual. We're asking the public for assistance to be able to identify this individual.
Again, here's another look at the person that police are working to identify, again, in the Brown University shooting that happened on Saturday. Let's bring in our guests, and we also are going to have the information up on your screen. You can always call the FBI tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI. Joining us, it's so good to have everyone here. We have Erica Wilson, Melissa Redmond, and Ellis Palavidas. And Ellis, I want to start with you, get your take on where we are in this investigation. I mean, the public there, very concerned when we don't have someone in custody.
On a case like this, with such a tragedy, you are always going to get that type of pressure. I think that law enforcement is particularly in a tough spot. because there's a lot more that's going on beyond what we are seeing. And if you look at even that press conference, it is very narrow, it is very specific. They're only using the public in the way that they need to. That does not mean that with all the law enforcement tools that they have, from local all the way through to federal level, that there isn't a lot more going underneath. And I feel like navigating that is tough. And sometimes they catch a lot of flack, even though they're making more progress than they wish to reveal.
Yeah, Erica, do you think that this pressure is warranted? That press conference was pretty testy. People were clamoring to question them not only on what happens next and what information there is, but also why are there not more videos? Why wasn't video released sooner? And why was the wrong person in custody?
Absolutely, because this is very atypical. If you look historically, when you have these type of school shootings, they typically capture the person usually in the midst of all this going on. So we usually don't have a suspect at large in these type of shootings. And so definitely you have the safety of the students, you have the concerns of the community, because is he going to do it again? What were his motives? These are all things that were unknown. So the pressure is insurmountable. So they definitely need to work with the community to try to figure out who this person is.
Yeah, motives become really important right now, Melissa, when you have someone who is on the loose. Sometimes we're just trying to figure it out because we want to know why, but this is why, because they're on the loose. They could strike again.
It definitely is a different dynamic and a different type of investigation. I agree with Ellis. It is very difficult because law enforcement has all of the information we don't, and they are very limited in what information they can provide. At the same time, they want to reassure the public that they're safe. And the public is like, how can you tell me I'm safe if you're not giving me all of the information? And that, again, information may impact the investigation. So it's kind of like this vicious catch-22 that the law enforcement is put in what information they can provide while they're trying to assure the public and not impact their investigation.
Yeah, Ellis, what do you think about the question that officials got about whether or not this classroom was targeted? The university officials said, yes, was targeted in this. They wouldn't go so far as to say the classroom was targeted, but that will help a lot, and it could be what they are asking some of these faculty members and students.
I think that it's difficult because you need a person to have a motive. And if you're closing in on someone, you need to know that before you're able to make other statements. And I think you're operating in a place where there's so many different law enforcement agencies, school administrators, campus police, that they're trying to answer, but a lot of people may not even know or have heard some information that changed. So that's all part of this process too. So I'm not surprised we're getting mixed messages.
Yeah, a lot of messages swirling, and I do want to actually listen to some sound that we have from, I believe it's the vigil, but there are students who have been interviewed talking about what they've been through in the last 48 hours of this unknown situation there on their campus. Let's listen.
I always felt that Brown is such a safe place, and Providence as well, and so it really kind of hits home. And I know a lot of people were talking about this isn't something that I ever thought would happen here. We're all very sad and coming out of a period of being very scared.
All right, Erica, can you react to that? I mean, their parents are going to be watching this. They're the students who are at the school who are being told it's fine, that they no longer are under a lockdown, but this could be something ongoing there at this university if someone isn't brought to justice.
Absolutely. And, you know, my daughter's in her second year at college, and so these type of things absolutely terrify me. But what breaks my heart is there are at least there was one, but I found out today there are 2 students who've been in previous school shootings. And I think we've become so desensitized to these type of things because they happen so much. But certainly these are not the type of things that we want to see when we send our kids off to college. And we want to make sure that the college is being proactive in working in conjunction with law enforcement to make sure that these type of things don't keep happening.
Yeah, you said it. You don't want to become desensitized to it. But sometimes, Melissa, that can be difficult when you see one after the other. I mean, we just in the last 7 days seen the Kentucky State University campus and now Brown University.
And you don't think it will happen at your school until it does. And I think the extra, like we talked about before, the fact that the suspect in this case is still at large presents a whole nother level of terror in that you can't really be assured that you are safe when the person who committed this act, no one knows where they are.
Ellis, the language that they are using, I don't know how much of the press conference today you were able to hear, but in general, you know, they're not saying armed and dangerous. They're not saying they might be in this place? Is it because they don't have the details, or do they know more than they are able to share?
Usually, in my experience, because I've handled cases like this, when they go with the armed and dangerous, you're usually dealing with my more violent criminal clients who have a record and a history, and they do have some quantum of proof or belief that they are armed and dangerous. I've worked on I've represented cooperators on active cases, for example, where that's been the case. So the other component of this, though, is this kind of event isn't obviously your run-of-the-mill crime done by a run-of-the-mill criminal. This is a mass casualty event, and usually they're not going to come back to the scene and do the same thing again. Now, that said, there's always an exception. I don't want to sit here and, die on that hill, but nonetheless, I think that that's a component of this, the nature of this crime.
Yeah, Erica, can you weigh in on that too? Because I love what Ellis is saying about the way that police are approaching this and everything. Do we think that that classroom would have been targeted because it was a Saturday lecture? We see the person scoping out, perhaps. I'm adding that context. The police did not say he was scoping anything out. But looking at his movements in this video, you get the sense that if he's there the day before, that he's scoping things out. How does that impact the way investigators are going to approach this?
I mean, it certainly lends itself to the fact that he did particularly target this class, because you don't scope out and do these type of things the day before. This was not something that he just happened to just be strolling along and do this type of thing. So we definitely, the thing for me is we don't know. Like, there's so many unknowns. We don't know what his motive is. We don't know if he was targeting a class or a specific person. We don't know if he's angry at the university. It's just so many things that are unknown, but that doesn't mean that the police, as well as the school, should not still move with an abundance of caution.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone, thank you so much for your comments. Of course, if anyone has any information, you can call the FBI at 1-800-225-5324. We've got to get to a break. When we come back, we have our hot takes and cold facts. Our panel is going to give us their opinions on today's biggest cases, from an alleged faked dentist who was indicted to a verdict in the murder of Anna Walsh trial, and another killer who was making headlines after attempting, allegedly, to take his life in prison.
This is the Court TV podcast.
This Wednesday, this was the biggest case that we covered this week. Our panel is still with us, and again, they have 25 seconds on the clock to state their case. Erica Wilson, Melissa Redmond, and Ellis Palavidas with us. Erica, start with you. Your take on Brian Walsh's verdict.
Not surprised at all, based on the evidence that was presented, so I'm not surprised. Yeah.
She's going to leave all the time on the clock.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Tell me everything that you wanted to say about it. It's okay. We need a little time after this is over. Melissa, I'm going to give you 25 seconds to talk about what Brian Walsh could have done differently to change this outcome, if anything.
Well, I think it started when you cut up your wife's body, because you panic and you mysteriously find her deceased and cut her up. I think anything after that, I'm surprised it went to trial. I was very surprised it went to trial. I thought when he pled in the beginning during jury selection, he was going to plead to the whole thing. But the verdict, yeah, not a shocker at all.
All right. A very wise person told me I only needed to give the attorneys 20 seconds, and maybe that's the case. Ellis, your take on Brian Walsh and what we can expect ahead for this guy.
Well, he's going to go to jail, but, my hot take on this is that we haven't talked about how, the defense attorney is also kind of a victim here, too. This is a really tough case to take to trial when you've already pled to disposing and chopping up the body. So as I was watching this, you got this guy on this high-profile case saying that it was a sudden death. I mean, that's tough. That's a tough thing to sell. I'm not surprised with the verdict.
Yeah, and then he didn't even take the stand. So you're right, really tough for this defense team. Let's move to our hot take number 2. This headline, Natalie Holloway's killer, Joran Vandersloot. We had headlines from him from a Peruvian publication, injured from an apparent attempt on his life in that prison where he is being housed. Vandersloot was sentenced to 28 years for the murder of Stephanie Flores there in Peru. But in 2023, he confessed on the record to killing 18-year-old Natalie Holloway in Aruba while she was there on a senior trip. Now, he's had some issues behind bars before. He had some people who were after him back in 2024. But let's get the hot takes from our panel on this one. Melissa, I'm going to start with you. Natalie Holloway, so many people remember this story from back in 2005. What's your take?
I think given his past, the Natalee Holloway case, he was convicted of murdering another young lady, the problems he had in prison, and I think he was getting ready to be sent to a prison in El Salvador that might have preempted this. So it's always tragic when someone feels like they've gotten to the point where they will want to take their own life. I can't imagine what being in prison in Peru is like, but I would imagine that going to prison in El Salvador has something to do with it.
All right, time's up. Let's move to Ellis. Ellis, what's your take on Natalee Holloway's killer behind bars?
I think that this says a lot about even the most violent, psychopathic murderers love freedom. The soul yearns for freedom. And I think a lot of people think that going to jail sometimes isn't a sufficient punishment. But I think what you see here is that it is, because he wanted to take his own life. And my final piece is that if you're going to try it, you ought to complete it, because otherwise you're going to be monitored and you're going to be way more isolated. So he's in for a tougher time now.
Erica Wilson, your final thought on this?
Yes, okay, now see, I don't have a clock. Okay, there's my clock. Yeah, the sad part about this one, I think, is the fact that Natalee Holloway's family waited so long. I remember this case going back for years upon years. And for him, I know that they wanted to see justice, and certainly he's been convicted and he's in jail. But for your family, you want that sense of closure, and you want to be able to know that he is spending the rest of his days in jail thinking about exactly what he did. And now that he wants to take the easy way out, I think that's kind of a slap in the face to the family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you all for those takes. Let's move to our third headline. This one out of Atlanta, Georgia, a case that's gone viral on social media. Someone who was self-proclaimed as a veneer king, Brandon Dillard, indicted on 113 counts, including RICO. Dillard allegedly made millions performing cosmetic dental procedures without a license. He became popular on TikTok, and investigators say some of his customers were harmed by his unlicensed work. He is charged with more than 100 counts, including 54 counts of theft by deception, RICO Act charges, and 24 counts of practice of dentistry without a license. Melissa, let me start with you. 25 seconds on the clock. Your take on the veneer king.
I wonder who are these people who went to an unlicensed person to get veneers, of all things done. Just a quick Google of how much it costs to get veneers, and you're going to someone who could do it for $5,000. I would think that would be a buyer beware situation. That being said, he made a ton of money. And with 113 counts, I hope he has some of that to pay for a good legal defense.
Ellis, do you think that this should be RICO?
That is one of my hot takes for sure, which is, I don't know what's going on, but there's every other day I hear there's a new RICO case in Atlanta. And so in my view, RICO is one of these charges that is now being used a lot. And it's so easy to make. You just need 2 predicate offenses, and suddenly you have, 2 or more people, and it's over. You have a RICO. The next piece, though, is I want to know how injured people were.
Oh, yeah. Erica, I'm going to get your final take on this one. Do you think it should be civil or criminal? He's going to face a criminal judge.
It needs to be both. At the end of the day, it does need to be both. But the RICO, I don't know. The RICO is a stretch. Fonnie is starting to love the RICO. I don't know what it is, but that's her thing now. It's her jam, and I get it. But it definitely needs to be civil, because and to the people's defense, again, a lot of people, they don't know. Like, they're people, they don't do their necessary research. People are just wanting to be beautiful, and they want better teeth, and they see all the work. And he was Instagram famous, so if you saw him on Instagram and you saw his work, you give him a chance.
And that is our time. Erica Wilson, Melissa Redmond, and Ellis Palavitas, thank you so much for all of your opinions. We have got to leave it there, but thank you for joining us this hour.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.